Hello everyone, I'm here today to do a review of Nights of Plague by Orhan Pamuk, and I received this as a review copy from NetGalley, so thank you to NetGalley and the publisher for letting me read this in advance. And it's coming up, I think, in October, so if you're interested, look for it in October. But basically this book is set in 1901 in the Ottoman Empire. And in particular in this small island that is a made-up island for the book, that is in the eastern part of the Mediterranean, and a plague has broke out. There is sort of a pandemic situation, and before we go further, I think this was mostly written before the COVID pandemic, so yeah, the dynamics are similar, but it is not based on COVID. It's not like a retake on COVID or something like that. It was imagined and written mostly before all this happened. But yeah, it's the plague is happening. So at the beginning of the book, we see this island, how they're scared, they want to know why this happened, but at the same time they have to quarantine. There is all these quarantine rules, and the tension starts increasing, especially between Muslims and Christians, because one faction is imposing the quarantine rules and the other faction doesn't believe in them. We see how the political and religious stance of people affect their take on the quarantine rules, which is kind of apt for the moment right now, right? Like the way that people see the pandemic and the rules, it very much depends on what their leaders tell them. And that's yeah, I mean that feels very real right now. So the first, I will say, half of the book is focused on the doctors, the quarantine rules, the social unrest that stems from that, because obviously a lot of people are losing a lot of money and a lot of families and are broken up, and some quarantine locations are being almost like prisons. So all of these factors affect the experience, and we see how that happens. We don't particularly follow characters. I mean, there are characters that we talk about, but it's not about them. It's about the atmosphere and the feeling. This book is very focused on the atmosphere and the place. The place is its own character almost. And then in the second half of the book, we do have a bit more stronger characters, and that's because some political upheaval happens. There is a big moment that happens with politically. I don't want to spoil it, but it does happen. And then the second half of the book focuses a lot more on that particular political move and the characters and the people that are involved in it, and it is narrated from the perspective of a historian that is writing about this island, and she mostly keeps the language very academic, but there is also times where she breaks the fourth wall and addresses the reader directly. And then there's an epilogue where we have the backstory of that historian. And for me, this book does a lot of good things, and I really, really enjoy the atmosphere that it created and all of the tensions and the political occurrence that happen, how politicians use the plague to move forward their agendas, how the normal people were scared to admit that one family member had the plague because they knew that they had to quarantine, and all of these things felt very real and very apt for me. I think that was really, really well done. Also, the descriptions are very detailed but not very flowery, which made it feel slightly academic, which makes sense for the setup of the book, but also it felt very like it made the place really real in a sense, because all of these details were there. But I think ultimately for me this book was a bit too long for what it was trying to do. I think if it was trying to focus on the characters, it would have been easier to follow for such a long time, because then you are invested in the characters, but it is not focused on the characters. As I said, there are characters, but it's not the main point of the book. The main point of the book is like the atmosphere and the situation, and for me that didn't grant the 600 page that this book was. I would have preferred that to be, if that was the angle that was chosen, I would have preferred it to be edited down, because there were some times where things were repeated over and over again, which again, it's the nature of pandemics, as we know now. Things come and go in waves, and quarantines come and go in waves, so there is a repetition of things. But yeah, that to read as a reading experience, maybe it was not the most pleasant one in that sense. So for me, even though I think there are elements of this book that I really enjoyed, it didn't quite all come together in the way that I think the author was intending, and there were some angles that I doubted that had the impact that was intended, especially the choice of making the narrator this historian and then give us the backstory at the end. I think it was a weird choice. I think that I like the fourth wall breaking kind of thing. I thought that was cool, but then at the end there is an epigraph with all the story of this historian, which is personally connected to the political actors on that island at the time. And I felt like that was just a bit forced, like there was no character development in the whole book, and then this epigraph makes the character development of the narrator, which it was not even in the story at all, in the rest of the book. So that felt like a weird choice to me. There were some good ideas there, but when it came to put it all together, it didn't necessarily make it an easy book to read or a fulfilling book to read. It was just either too long, or it was just not developed enough in terms of characters. It was a middle of the road book for me. But I hope you enjoyed this review. Let me know if you're still interested in reading this book. If you have read any other Orhan Pamuk that you will like and want to chat in the comments about that, let me know. And until next video, bye!